At the foot of Mount Fuji, in the heart of Japan, there is a forest so dense and so quiet that the Japanese gave it a name that sounds like poetry: Jukai, the Sea of Trees. From the slopes of the mountain above, you can see why. The forest canopy rolls out across 30 square kilometers in unbroken waves of green, undulating like the surface of an ocean. Beneath that canopy is a world of profound stillness: moss covered ground, twisted roots that crawl across black volcanic rock, sunlight falling in scattered shafts through the trees, and a silence so complete that visitors describe it as something they can feel pressing against them. It is one of the most beautiful places in Japan. It is a protected national park. It is one of the country's richest pockets of wildlife, home to rare butterflies, to deer, to black bears, to a whole living world humming quietly beneath the trees. And it is, by reputation, one of the most haunted places on Earth. For more than 1,000 years, the people of Japan have told stories about this forest, of spirits among the trees, of voices on the wind, of a place where the boundary between the living and the dead grew thin. Tonight, we are going to walk into the Sea of Trees. We are going to look at how it was born in fire, why it holds a silence unlike anywhere else on Earth, why it confuses compasses and disorients those who enter it, and the ancient folklore that made it sacred and feared in equal measure. And we are going to talk honestly and with care about the sorrow this forest has come to carry in the modern world, and why the most important thing we can do is treat it and everyone connected to it with respect. This is Aokigahara, the Sea of Trees. Welcome back to the Unexplained Encounters and to our series on the world's most haunted places. Tonight we travel to Japan, to a forest at the base of its most sacred mountain, a place of genuine natural wonder and deep ancient mystery. And to understand it, we have to begin more than 1,000 years ago, with a mountain tearing itself open. In the year 864, Mount Fuji erupted. It was one of the largest eruptions in the mountain's recorded history, an event so significant it is remembered as the Jogan eruption. A torrent of molten lava poured down Fuji's northwestern flank. It flowed across the land below. It buried and partially filled an ancient lake. And then, slowly, it cooled, and it hardened into a vast field of black, porous volcanic rock, 30 square kilometers of it. That hardened lava field is the foundation of Aokigahara. The forest you see today grew over the following 11 centuries on top of that rock. And the volcanic origin of the forest is the key to everything that makes it strange. Because Aokigahara is not like other forests. It grew on stone, not soil. The layer of earth over the hardened lava is thin, so the trees cannot send their roots deep. Instead, the roots spread out across the surface of the rock, searching for purchase, crawling over and around the black lava in twisting, sprawling, serpentine shapes. Visitors describe them as looking almost alive, like something reaching. The ground is uneven, broken, riddled with hollows and crevices and hidden caves where the lava cooled around pockets of gas 1,000 years ago. It is a landscape built by a volcano, and the people who first walked into it sensed immediately that it was a place apart. The first thing everyone notices about Aokigahara is the silence. It is not ordinary quiet. It is something deeper, heavier, almost physical. People who enter the forest describe the sound of the outside world simply falling away. The wind, the distant roads, even their own footsteps, swallowed and muffled until there is almost nothing left. And there is a real physical reason for it. The porous volcanic rock that forms the forest floor is full of tiny holes and channels, the frozen bubbles of a cooling lava flow. That porous structure absorbs sound. It soaks up noise the way a sponge soaks up water. Combined with the extraordinary density of the trees and the thick carpet of moss, the forest becomes a kind of natural, soundproof chamber. The result is a stillness that many visitors find beautiful and many find deeply unsettling. In a world that is never truly quiet, Aokigahara is quiet in a way that feels wrong to the human nervous system. We are not used to the absence of sound. And in that absence, the mind starts to fill the silence with its own meanings. For the people of ancient Japan, that silence was not a geological curiosity. It was spiritual. A forest this still, this removed from the ordinary world, was a place where the veil between the living and the dead felt thin, a place where spirits might dwell. And there was one more property of this forest that deepened that belief, one that, even today, genuinely disorients the people who venture off its paths. Now, right before I explain the real, documented phenomenon that causes compasses to falter and visitors to lose their way in Aokigahara, the strange property that gave rise to legends of the forest pulling people deeper, I need you to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell, because the science behind it is genuinely fascinating, and it's the bridge between the forest's geology and its ghost stories. And next week, we continue our journey into the world's most haunted places. Go ahead, I'll wait. There is a legend that says Aokigahara does not let you leave, that the forest itself pulls travelers off the path and turns them around, deeper and deeper into the trees, until they cannot find their way out, that compasses spin uselessly, that the forest swallows people. And like the silence, this legend has a real physical root. Remember that the entire forest sits on lava from Mount Fuji. That lava is rich in iron, specifically in a mineral called magnetite, one of the most magnetic minerals on Earth, deposited in the rock when it erupted and cooled in 864. The ground beneath Aokigahara is quite literally magnetized. Now, here honesty matters, because this is where legend tends to outrun fact. The popular story says compasses go wild everywhere in the forest. That is exaggerated. Held at normal height, a compass in Aokigahara generally works just fine. But place that compass directly on the lava rock, and the local magnetic field of the iron-rich stone genuinely can deflect the needle, pulling it away from true north. The magnetism is real. It is measurable. It is just more localized than the legend claims. But the disorientation that visitors experience is absolutely real, and it doesn't actually need the magnetism to explain it. Picture the forest. The trees grow in dense, repeating, near identical patterns. The canopy is so thick that sunlight barely penetrates, so there is little sense of the sun's direction. There are no landmarks, no clearings, no distinctive features, just the same twisted roots in black rock and green moss in every direction, endlessly. Phone reception vanishes. GPS, under that heavy canopy and amid the iron-rich rock, becomes unreliable. In an environment like that, a human being loses all sense of direction with terrifying speed. Every direction looks the same. There is no way to orient yourself. People who step off the marked trails have, on occasion, been found days later, only a couple of hundred meters from the path, unable, in all that uniformity, to find their way back to it. The forest doesn't supernaturally pull people deeper. It simply removes every cue a human uses to find their way and lets our own disorientation do the rest. To the people who first experienced that, who felt the forest erase their sense of direction and refused to let them out, it must have felt exactly like being seized by something unseen. This is why the geology and the ghost stories of Aokigahara are inseparable. The silence that felt like spirits was the porous rock. The pull that felt like ghosts was the magnetism in the maze of identical trees. The forest's reputation was built on real, physical properties, interpreted for 1,000 years through the lens of the spiritual. And that spiritual lens has a name and a deep history. In Japanese tradition, the dead do not always rest. In both Shinto and Buddhist belief, a person who dies peacefully, with their affairs settled and the proper rites performed, moves on. But a person who dies suddenly, violently, or in the grip of powerful emotion, grief, rage, betrayal, despair, may not. Their spirit can become tethered to the world, trapped between life and the afterlife, unable to complete the journey. Such a spirit is called a yude. The yude is one of the oldest and most enduring figures in Japanese folklore, the sorrowful, lingering ghost bound to the place of its suffering. And for centuries, Aokigahara was believed to be full of them. Part of that belief is tied to a genuinely dark thread in Japanese history, or at least in Japanese legend. There is an old practice, or an old story of a practice, called ubasute. The word refers to a time of terrible famine, when a family that could not feed everyone would carry an elderly or infirm relative, someone who could no longer work, who consumed food the others needed to survive, to a remote and lonely place, and leave them there to die. Whether Ubasute was ever truly carried out in Aokigahara specifically is debated by historians. Much of it may be folklore rather than documented fact, but the practice itself, in times of unbearable hardship, appears in stories across Japan. And Aokigahara, silent, isolated, removed from the world, became attached in the cultural imagination to that sorrow, a place where the abandoned were left, where people died alone, frightened, and full of grief. And the spirits of those people, the legend says, became yude, restless, mournful presences lingering among the twisted roots, the wails heard on the wind, the figures glimpsed between the trees, the cold and sudden dread that visitors report feeling as they go deeper. For 1,000 years, that was the story of Aokigahara, a beautiful, silent, sacred, and sorrowful place haunted by the grief of the abandoned dead. And then, in the modern era, a new layer of sorrow was added to the old one, and we have to talk about it, carefully and with respect. In the 20th century, Aokigahara became associated with something painful. It became known as a place where people went to end their own lives. I am going to handle this part of the story differently than most, because most coverage of this forest sensationalizes this, turns real human tragedy into horror entertainment, into shock content, into clicks. This channel is not going to do that. There will be no numbers, no descriptions, no grim details. Because behind every one of those stories was a real person in unbearable pain and a family left behind. They are not props for a ghost story. What is worth understanding is how this association took hold, because it says something important about the power of stories. For much of its history, Aokigahara's reputation was about spirits and folklore, not about modern tragedy. But in 1960, a celebrated Japanese author named Seicho Matsumoto published a novel in which a heartbroken character walks into the sea of trees to die. The story was told in a tragic, romantic way. It was popular, it was adapted, and it planted an idea in the cultural imagination, an idea that, over the following decades, reinforced by other books and films and media, slowly and tragically reshaped how the forest was seen. This is the sobering power of a story. A novel romanticized a place, and that romance, repeated and amplified for decades, helped attach real sorrow to real trees. It is a stark reminder that how we talk about these things matters, that romanticizing pain can cause more of it. And here's the part that I think matters most, and that most coverage leaves out entirely. Japan has not treated this forest as a morbid curiosity. Japan has fought for it. The authorities deliberately stopped publishing the annual figures, specifically to reduce the forest's grim notoriety, to stop the number itself from drawing people in. Signs have been placed at the forest's edges and trailheads, written with care and compassion, urging anyone in despair to stop, to think of their family, to reach out, and giving them a number to call for help. Volunteers and local officials patrol the woods. Prevention workers treat the forest not as a haunted attraction, but as a place to intercept people in their darkest moment and offer them a hand back toward life. The forest is being actively redefined by the people who love it, away from a symbol of death and back toward what it has always also been, a place of nature, of beauty, of life. And that is why, in 2017, when a foreign internet personality walked into Aokigahara and filmed something he never should have filmed, turning a real tragedy into shocking online content for views, the response around the world was outrage, because it was a profound violation of the dead, of their families, of a place that an entire nation was trying to treat with dignity. It was exactly the opposite of how this forest and the people connected to it deserve to be treated. I bring that up not to repeat it, but because it draws the line clearly. There is a way to talk about Aokigahara that honors it, and there is a way that desecrates it. The difference is whether you treat the people involved as human beings or as content. We choose to honor it. So let us end where we began, with the forest itself. Because Aokigahara is not, in truth, a place of death. That is the reputation the modern world hung on it. But stand inside it, and what surrounds you is overwhelmingly, defiantly alive. The Sea of Trees is one of the most significant biodiversity hotspots in central Japan. Rare butterflies drift through the shafts of light. Deer move quietly through the undergrowth. Black bears, wild boar, and countless birds make their home among the roots. The trees themselves, Japanese cypress, hemlock, beech, have spent 11 centuries patiently turning a field of barren volcanic rock into a thriving, living forest. Life grew here out of fire and stone against every odds. There is something profound in that, and the Buddhist tradition that runs through this forest would recognize it. Aokigahara is a place of cycles, of death feeding life, of a mountain's destruction becoming, over 1,000 years, one of the greenest and most alive places in the country. The lava that buried the land became the foundation for a forest. The ending became a beginning. Is Aokigahara haunted? For 1,000 years, the people of Japan have felt something in its silence, the lingering yurei, the sorrow of the abandoned, the weight of all that the forest has witnessed. Whether you believe those are literal spirits or the natural response of the human soul to a place this still, this old, and this heavy with story, the feeling is real. People who walk there feel watched. They feel the presence of grief. But the forest is also genuinely, gloriously alive, sacred to the mountain that made it, protected, loved, fought for, and quietly working every single day through the people who patrol its paths and post their gentle signs to turn its darkest reputation back toward light. The Sea of Trees has held 1,000 years of stories, of spirits, of sorrow, of survival. And the truest thing that can be said about it is the thing the ghost stories always miss. It is not a place of endings. It is a place where life refused to stop growing. Aokigahara, the Sea of Trees, is a forest born from a volcano, grown on stone, wrapped in a silence unlike anywhere on earth, and woven through with 1,000 years of Japanese folklore about the spirits of the lingering dead. It is genuinely one of the most atmospheric and mysterious places in the world. It has also come to carry a deep modern sorrow, and the lesson of that sorrow is one worth carrying out of the forest with us: that the way we speak about pain matters, that real people are never content, and that the most haunting places deserve not our exploitation, but our respect. And before we close tonight, something more important than any ghost story. If you are watching this and you are struggling, if you are carrying a pain that feels too heavy, please hear this. You are not alone, and that pain is not the end of your story. Reach out to someone, a friend, a family member, a professional. In the United States, you can call or text 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, anytime, day or night. Wherever you are in the world, there are people trained and waiting to help, and there is no shame in reaching for them. The people who love you would so much rather have you here. That's the most important thing I'll say in any video on this channel. Thank you for letting me say it. Subscribe to the Unexplained Encounters and tap the notification bell. Next week, we continue our journey into the world's most haunted places. And tonight's comment question, asked gently, setting the modern reputation aside, what do you make of the older Aokigahara? The silence, the magnetism, the Yurei folklore, the forest born from fire? Do you believe a place can hold the weight of its history? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. I'll see you next week. Take care of yourselves and sleep well.